Thank you, Dr. Tomberlin, Mr. Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, and Carleton graduates. Our country, our university, and my school cherish broad-mindedness and internationality, and so does our guest today. I feel really privileged to introduce to you Dr. Peter Buckley, professor at the University of Leeds. We have here a person who in 2012 was appointed an officer of the British Empire, quote unquote, for services to higher education, international business, and research. What an accolade for Dr. Buckley, and through him for business, for international business, for research, and perhaps above all for education. Peter is the most accomplished and honored academic in international business today, having received practically every award there is: the Eminent Scholar in Management Prize, a British Lifetime Achievement Award, election as Fellow of 6 national and international academies, President of the 2 most important associations in our field, founder of 2 major research centers at Leeds. I could go on for a long time. His relationship with us specifically goes back to the 1980s, when he began studying Canada's international relations, publishing and giving numerous talks in or about Canada to this day. In 1990, just before we introduced our BIB program and the IB concentration in the BCom, Peter helped us to establish our first ever international exchange agreement and make us one of the first Canadian business schools and Carleton units to go international. Since then, he has visited with us several times, mentored many of us, been keynote speaker at our Sprott Doctoral Symposium, and remained an all-round good friend of the school. You may have heard of Sir Isaac Newton's adage when in 1675 he said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing at the shoulders of giants." Well, with more than 250 journal articles and 50 books, Dr. Buckley has over 36,000 citations to his works, which gives you an idea of how many other works and scholars have stood on his shoulders over the years. Peter's life story shows that what matters is not only what you study, but also what, and more importantly, what you make of it and how you use it to add value to our society. As I said at the outset, he, Sprott, Carleton, and Canada are connected by shared values. And like us here, Peter continues to study, teach, mentor, and work to help better the human condition and by creating a better understanding of how our world works. Peter, we are proud to welcome you to the Carleton family. Mr. Vice Chancellor, in recognition of his extraordinary contribution to international business education and research, I request that you confer the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, to Peter Buckley.
Peter, I wonder, as you listen to all of those things that are being said about you, it takes you back to the day when you would have been sitting in those chairs thinking, am I ever going to be successful? Am I ever going to be somebody that people look up to? And now look at you. Somebody that we can bring almost to tears by talking about the incredible things you've done. You are truly a person on whose shoulders people stand. You are truly a giant. You are truly a member of the community that believes that business is a force for good. And by the authority vested in me by the Board of Governors and on the recommendation of Senate, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, with all of the rights, privileges, and obligations appertaining thereto. Congratulations, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Peter Buckley will now give the Convocation address.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Chair of the Board of Governors, graduates and honoured guests, I would like to begin by thanking Carleton University and the Sprott School of Business for this great honour. I can only imagine that today's graduates who have worked so hard for their degrees must wonder why this person is getting a degree for just standing here and pontificating. I would therefore like to reflect on how I got here and what I have learned along the way, in the hope that some of my reflections spill over into your past, present, and future experiences. I began as an economist. At school, economics was introduced as a new, innovative, and exciting subject, and I fell for it. It lived up to expectations. During my first degree at York University, that's the one in Yorkshire, two concepts struck me with great force. The first was that economics was, or could be, a highly practical, useful subject that had potentially great welfare benefits. The second was that it held the key to the largest issue facing us then and still confronting us now: poverty and development. This puts me in mind of the great Cambridge economist Alfred Marshall, who had a not very distinguished portrait of a poor man above his desk, so he would constantly be reminded of the purpose of his subject. With this in mind, I embarked on an MA in development economics in the hope of combining both practicality and purposefulness. I had already encountered the organisation that was to be the bulk of my research life, the multinational enterprise, in trade and development courses, and it struck me that the international firm was if not the key entity linking developed and underdeveloped countries. Before leaving economics and transitioning to international business, it is worthwhile reminding ourselves that the founder of economics, Adam Smith, wrote two great works. The first, The Wealth of Nations, emphasized the gains to wider society from the pursuit of self-interest by the invisible hand of the market that creates economic activity, employment, and innovation. But his other book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, emphasizes moral restraint and the exercise of sympathy for others. Empathy, we might now say. Both of these aspects are important, so we can talk about creativity with a human face, development with a concern for others. And these are important lessons, and not the obvious ones from economics, which has sometimes been called the dismal science. The growth of international business as an academic study began about the time that I was a research student and then doing my apprenticeship as a research assistant to John Dunning at Reading, who was a pioneer in the field. Canada has a proud record of contributions to international business thinking, and one of the key founders of the subject was a Canadian, Stephen Hymer. The observation that much of Canadian industry was foreign-owned prompted Hymer, Ed Safarian, and others to examine the role of foreign ownership of domestic industry and that of internationalization in the strategy of companies. This has become my life's work and has led, among other things, to the publication of a book and articles on Canadian trade and investment relations with Britain in particular. Another great Canadian international business scholar, Alan Rugman, once said that one of my finest achievements was to get published a book with Canada in the title. Many of the graduates here, I guess a majority, will have a working life that will inevitably involve international business and dealings across cultures. I am convinced that the learning achieved here at Carleton University, including the Sprott School and Carleton's internationally focused programs, will equip you for the undoubted challenges that cross-cultural work involves. I can only applaud this type of work that I am familiar with through the Sprott Doctoral Symposium and the International Business Studies Group, but I suggest that a lifelong investment in crossing boundaries, not only cultural and national ones, may be the most important gift of your education so far. Time and place are very important. There has never been a better time for the advocacy of an international orientation in business and in life. There is not a better place than Canada, with its history of openness and outreach, to practice internationalism. I have long been involved with our Canadian Studies Centre at Leeds, and have developed many international programs, including a long-lasting link with my friend Nick Papadopoulos here. In addition to founding the Centre of International Business at the University of Leeds, I'm also the founder of the India and South Asia Business Centre and the Business Confucius Institute at Leeds. These are not only important academic ventures, but also sources of deeper understanding and friendship with people of very different traditions and backgrounds. Such efforts are sometimes arduous, but also immensely rewarding and great fun. As a business and conference tourist, I was once described as professor of visiting nice places. This is one of them, and it's a nice epithet. I hope that I have conveyed some of the importance and the joy of conducting business and personal relationships on an international basis. I wish you every success and congratulate all the graduates on their hard work, their success, and on having laid the basis for lifelong service and achievement. Thank you all.